Galaxy's Child. Geordi meets his holodeck crush, while Picard appends seeking out new life with and then kill it.
Dr. Leah Brahms from the episode Booby Trap is going to be coming aboard the Enterprise, and Geordi is excited.
I mean, I've studied her schematics for years.
It was a little weird, especially considering he's never actually met her in person before. For those who aren't familiar, Geordi explains the plot of Booby Trap to Guinan, who sums up pretty much how I was feeling.
So you met a computer-simulated female?
But Geordi does try and justify it, and he is convinced that they're going to be great friends.
But when she beams aboard, she immediately shuts him down.
The Forge. So you're the one who's fouled up my engine designs.
She's questioning all the modifications he's made to the ship, and his argument is that theory and application don't always match.
And the way Dr. Brahms presents her arguments honestly makes her sound like kind of an idiot.
Is that going to be your only defense, Commander? That same tired rhetoric? Out here in the field, we learn things you designers couldn't possibly understand.
Data picks up an unusual energy reading, so they go to check it out.
Turns out Data's signal is a weird structure that no one has ever seen before.
And Picard does this weird little smile like he's excited, but every time they encounter something unknown, it almost gets them killed.
Geordi is not hiding his holodeck fantasy very well, and offers a dinner date in his quarters with Dr. Brahms' favorite meal, because he already knows what it is. Because he made a simulation of her and it was weird.
And he even acts all creepy about it.
I love Funchili.
Is that right?
Meanwhile, back in the interesting part of this episode, it turns out Data's structure exhibits life signs.
And they act like they've never seen anything like this before, but they must have forgotten about Tin Man.
That's a good point.
The people who've studied the transmissions think it's a starship, and they're sure it's alive.
Alive?
The object probes the Enterprise, and at first Picard wants to be open to show that they are not a threat. The object ends up zapping the Enterprise and disabling it.
They can't get away, and the radiation levels will kill them in 1 minute. So they shoot it, and it dies. And I'm sure it was just as Worf was sending his message to Starfleet, notifying them that they had just discovered a new life form.
Mr. Worf, begin compiling readings for transmission to Starfleet headquarters.
And Picard gets cartoonishly sentimental, even though this unknown life form was about to kill them.
They seem to have no qualms about trying to kill the 2D particles before.
And what about those bugs from Conspiracy?
They were seeking peaceful coexistence. Geordi is really working his date prep, and I was rolling my eyes the whole time and felt as uncomfortable as Dr. Brahms.
When she gets there, he makes a dumb comment about her hair being different. People change their hairstyles, Geordi. He must not remember Tasha and Beverly's hair from Haven.
He just keeps digging himself deeper with not hiding his porn simulation, and he creeps the hell out of Dr. Brahms, and she gets the hell out of there.
Data determines that the dead alien is about to give birth.
Beverly suggests freeing the creature from the parent's body, and Worf gets shut down for saying they should just leave it.
The parent proved to be a threat to the ship. We do not know how the offspring will react.
Your objection is noted, Mr. Worf.
The next day, Geordi and Dr. Brahms are crawling around, and he's still being a creep, even though she explicitly told him to stop doing that, and then she tells him that she's married.
And of course, Geordi is kind of an idiot for not knowing that, which they kind of try to brush off by Geordi saying that it was weird that the computer didn't tell him. Up on the bridge, they succeed in cutting the baby out of its CGI prison.
In 10 Forward, Geordi is moping and now bitching about Dr. Brahms since she rejected him.
And Guinan politely tells him he's being selfish in expecting Brahms to conform to his expectations.
But he does not listen. So after freeing this baby, Picard decides to completely abandon it. After being so torn up about killing the parent and not knowing anything about it, I would think they would take additional action to protect it, even if they didn't take that action themselves.
But when they try to leave, the creature mistakes the Enterprise for its mother and latches onto the hull and begins draining energy from the ship.
Dr. Brahms asks Geordi if he has a file of all the modifications he made to the ship, which obviously leads her to his porn simulation.
When he finds out where she is, he runs in like a little kid trying to cover up his mistakes, and she lays into him about how creepy it is.
And then Geordi tries to gaslight Dr. Brahms.
I've shown you courtesy and respect and a hell of a lot of patience. Oh, no, wait a minute. I'm guilty, okay? But not of what you think. of something much worse. I'm guilty of reaching out to you.
Up on the bridge, Worf says about the creature,
Its total volume has increased by 8.5% in the last 3 hours. I now read it at 46 million cubic meters.
but compared to the size that the Enterprise is supposed to be, that would be way too big.
They figure out the parent was headed for an asteroid belt with nutrients for the baby.
As they reach the asteroid field, more of the creatures begin approaching.
Dr. Brahms, who for some reason is acting apologetic towards Geordi instead of the other way around, has the idea to make the energy unpalatable for the creature. And of course, they only have 5 minutes before they're all dead.
And Geordi comes up with a typical nonsense Star Trek idea to alter the energy vibrations or whatever. When he tells Picard that he and Dr. Brahms have come up with a plan, she smiles as if pleased that he has reaccepted her, which pissed me off. She's not the one who should be trying to win him over.
And I like how when they're enacting the plan, Worf's only indicator is...
They are changing color.
He must have a blast with his mood ring.
It would always be in whatever the pissed off and frustrated color is.
Yeah, it only goes between red and black.
They gradually alter the energy frequency, and at first it looks like it might not work, but long story short, it does.
Later in 10 Forward, Geordi and Dr. Brahms are good friends now, or whatever. She ends up apologizing more, but Geordi doesn't do it at all. So he basically gets what he wants in the end. I thought that was pretty stupid.
He says he's glad he got the chance to meet the real her, but I think he was just convincing himself that the real her and the holodeck her are really two different people, so he won't feel so guilty the next time he bangs her in the holodeck.
Galaxy's Child. Overall,
it was cool to see the real Dr. Brahms show up, and that things didn't go in the direction Geordi expected, but she and Geordi both acted kind of stupidly throughout the episode, and they both kept shifting how they felt about things because the script said so, as opposed to them feeling like they had gotten there naturally. I thought the way Dr. Brahms reacted to Geordi's changes to the Enterprise was kind of stupid. It's not like she owns the ship, and clearly these changes are working out in the field, but for the rest of the episode, Geordi was definitely the one who was acting inappropriately. The space creature side of the episode could have been cool if we had learned more about them, but to me it ended up feeling pretty generic, and the bad CGI effects were very distracting, especially when it would have been easy to do it all practically. Picard's reaction to everything regarding the creatures was weird and out of character. In the end, I think the words generic and forgettable sum this episode up pretty well. All I remembered from having seen this one before was that Dr. Brahms didn't like Geordi, and if I think about it in the future, that's probably still the only thing I'll remember. I gave it a C-.
I gave it a D. I did enjoy the part about the new life form, even though I disagree with the crew's decisions, mainly deciding to abandon the baby immediately after killing the parent, saying we've interfered enough. But that's pretty typical of their past behavior. And not once, but twice in this episode, they end up in a situation where they only have minutes to live. And then there was Geordi's thing. The idea itself of reconciling fantasy perceptions with reality makes sense, but the way Geordi handled it was awful. It wouldn't have been as bad if it had not concerned a person who he was infatuated with. And it also bothered me that he didn't interact with any of the other bridge officers about his situation, because Guinan softly telling him he was being a creep obviously wasn't enough. I would have thought that after the experiences of Booby Trap and the incredibly deep connection Geordi had developed, he would have contacted Dr. Brahms to let her know what had happened and how much she had helped. Instead, he just let this fantasy grow in his head and expected the real world to mold itself to his expectations. And the fact that he never owns up to his own creepiness and gaslights Dr. Brahms until she apologizes made it worse.
And it was very frustrating to see where things ended up going.